In television shows, I have always had a strong preference for episodes that tie heavily into overarching plotlines over standalone episodes. And while the recent slew of Adventure Time episodes can't be called purely standalone since character relations and statuses do progress, many of the episodes leading up to King's Ransom have been largely based around the hijinks and still evoke a standalone type feel to them. I enjoyed these episodes and was entertained, but I wasn't beaming and having my eyes glisten. These episodes didn't resonate with me quite as much as the preceding episodes of Season 7. While Summer Showers elicits a heartfelt, emotional connection between Viola and her father, it felt sort of like a Lifetime Channel movie was condensed down and had its cast replaced with Adventure Time characters. We got another BMO romp with Angel Face, which, in my opinion, was packed too closely to the other BMO-centric episodes, so I ended up far more interested in Meow's return and what the future would hold for the feline, rather than in BMO's runaway roleplay. President Porpoise is Missing was comical, and I laughed a ton, but the central plotline was weak, and Banana Man's character arc just barely began by the episode's end. Blank-Eyed Girl was fun and spooky, but it also felt like an alternative to the episode Ghostfly, and personally, I enjoyed Ghostfly a whole bunch more. I love the stop-motion animation in Bad Jubies, but I can't help feeling the content was verging on Nick Jr. material. This episode felt like it was targeted more toward young children rather than to all ages. But then we finally got an episode that progresses a previously established plotline. The plotline of Betty's quest to save Simon. And when this episode ended, I was left with twinkles in my eyes. While it was immediately obvious that Betty was behind stealing Gunter as soon as Ice King was asked to hand over his crown, many of the traits Ice King, Finn, and Jake showcase had already been established in prior episodes, and the episode ended without a bang or any significant interaction from Magic Betty. The episode, nevertheless, was still a total pleasure to watch. Ice King busts into Finn and Jake's home in the middle of the night because Gunter is missing, and since Gunter is like Finn's Jake or Jake's Finn, this constitutes motive. And while Ice King probably does believe this silly rationalization to a degree, it's not like he actually freezes Finn and Jake or tries to harm them in any way. So I think there may be an actual part of him which decided to go to Finn and Jake because they are some of the few quote-unquote pals he knows that are capable of providing help in a time of crisis. While it can be hard to read into the mind of Ice King because of his loony personality, if Ice King had undoubted belief that Finn and Jake were the actual culprits, I think he would have frozen them rather than merely demand answers from them. Finn and Jake do feel legitimately bad for Ice King, Finn more so than Jake, though toward the end of the episode, Jake does exhibit serious concern for Gunter's well-being. Which is interesting, seeing as how Gunter was Orgalorg and all not too long ago. You'd think that fact might lead to a different kind of concern, but it seems like Finn and Jake are not particularly worried about Orgalorg re-emerging for whatever reason. So the duo decides to help Ice King get Gunter back, even though Ice King didn't ask for their help directly. At one point in the episode, Ice King ends up interrogating the fox who embodies isolation, at a moment when this fox finally found a simple enjoyment in life, being cozily tucked in. Ice King's threats, relatively, and even in general, are extremely mild, and the scenario is really silly, but you still can't help but feel bad for this fox, seeing as how he isn't involved in the kidnapping, and he has such a hard time dealing with life's hardships as it is. Plus, it's such a relatable feeling when you have to leave the comfort of a warm, cozy, and perfectly made bed. I got a lot of enjoyment from watching this goofy interaction. When our crew finally reaches the destination Gunter was taken to, Ice King pledges to save Gunter by himself, despite lacking his powers and needing to cross lava. While his rationale for going alone is the standard sort of foolishness we would expect from Ice King, one still can't help but appreciate the dedication and drive he showcases. Finn and Jake did not think Ice King would go as far as to risk his own life, without looking back or second-guessing himself once. But Ice King shows that even with all his insanity, he can exhibit a steely resolve. Even with the knowledge that this is a cartoon, and lava in cartoons isn't exactly as horrid as it is in real life, I mean, Finn stuck his head into magma, and then proceeded to pilot Jake into the flippin' volcano. And yet our main duo still isn't dead yet. Despite that, this scene still holds gravitas, and makes Ice King look properly heroic. Finn and Jake acquire a newfound respect for Ice King by the episode's end and see him in a new light. Perhaps next time they go on an adventure with Ice King in the vicinity, they won't just ditch him as usual. It is especially painful to see that despite all this devotion and fortified willpower Ice King demonstrates, as soon as he sees a pretty lady, it's all cast aside in an instant. After needlessly risking his livelihood for Gunter, he is immediately ready to give Gunter away permanently for just a hug. This further demonstrates how Ice King's grip on genuine emotions, even the emotions derived from the crown like his need for a Gunter, are incontrovertibly compromised by the primary driving desire of wanting a woman, which is a transmogrified form of Simon's desire to have Betty back when he first began wearing the crown. Ice King hasn't actually been kidnapping women recently, which just goes to show how much control he's been able to assert over himself despite still melting into a sorry mess whenever he's around a woman. As many other episodes have already demonstrated, with this being the newest addition to the bunch, even sociopaths are capable of having character development. This episode is the first time we see Betty in the flesh since You Forgot Your Floaties, and she seems much more calm and reserved than Magic Man. She did a bunch of calculations on the cave wall, and uses Orgalorg's essence to reprogram the crown. Her appearance is brief, however, and she barely says anything, which still leaves us with questions as to how becoming a wizard has changed her. As soon as Simon shows up, she vanishes. The mysteries about Magic Betty and how she plans to rescue Simon remain for the future. So I thought this episode was great. It was a setup episode which may have been predictable, but the comedy was golden, and the character interactions were sincere and oodles of fun to watch. This is yet another episode that introduces more questions than answers, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I am very curious to see what sort of influence the reprogrammed Ice Crown will have on Ice King now. I think it would be super neat to have Ice King as a background character in a few episodes over time, and in each episode his behavior would become more divergent from the norm, until the point where we finally have an episode centering on this plotline where the influence of the crown has shifted drastically. I also hope we have an episode on Magic Betty which focuses on what her mind has become, since this episode didn't reveal much in regards to her mental state. However the Adventure Time crew chooses to continue this plotline, I'm sure it will be fascinating.